Hey everyone, welcome back to Research Investment. I'm Simo, your equity research analyst host. So hitting you with the critical near-term breakdown of SoFi Technologies, ticker SoFi, for the week of October 13th, 2025. We're cutting through the noise to focus on what matters for your trading decisions and portfolio moves in the coming days. What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about SoFi. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. Starting off with the broader market, we have a lot of Fed speakers lined up this week, no different than last week, and that could absolutely inject volatility. Last week, the focus was heavily on persistent inflation and the potential for further tightening. This week, we're seeing early discussions around the implications of a potential government shutdown impacting Q4 GDP estimates, which could lead to cautious market sentiment. Luckily enough, over the weekend, we haven't seen major escalations, but the chatter alone can influence risk assets. When it comes down to these Fed speakers, their nuanced language on economic growth and future rate paths will be key. Beyond the Fed, we're looking at significant manufacturing data dropping. On Wednesday, we have the New York Manufacturing Index, Thursday brings the Philly Manufacturing Index, and then on Friday, we get the broader manufacturing production report. These are crucial reads on the health of the industrial economy. Stronger than expected data could fuel recession fears and rate hike concerns, while weaker data might suggest economic cooling, but also potentially a softer Fed stance. Either way, these can move the broader market and by extension, SoFi. A lot of key labor data will still be paused or delayed due to the ongoing shutdown debates, so the focus will really pivot to these other economic indicators. This week also marks the true beginning of Q3 2025 earnings season for the big players. Many analysts have been saying this earnings season is going to set the tone and potentially propel the market higher if corporate guidance remains robust. With big banks and major tech companies unveiling their earnings, strong or weak results could certainly impact SoFi, both directly through sector sentiment and indirectly through broader market movements. So, something to keep in mind. Now, specific to SoFi, there really isn't anything officially planned for this upcoming week in terms of corporate announcements. However, one key development has been the increasing chatter around SoFi's continued push into deposit gathering and enhanced banking features. The latest updates we've seen, potentially in the form of an email or subtle platform changes, suggest they're nearing a significant update to their rewards program or a new tier for their SoFi Money account. If you read between the lines, they're clearly trying to further incentivize primary banking relationships. This could be huge. We've been waiting for more tangible updates on how they plan to leverage that bank charter beyond just lending. While a full unveiling might be a few weeks out, any leaks or pre-announcements this week could certainly generate positive momentum. Some people in my comments have mentioned that the success of their deposit growth strategy is already priced into SoFi, and I do tend to partially agree. However, if they put out news that's truly going to cause FOMO, perhaps a highly competitive APY on checking or savings, or an innovative reward structure that beats competitors, then yes, that will get analysts talking, and those positive ratings could really push SoFi higher. The stock price itself might have priced in expected improvements, but a truly surprising or market-leading announcement that expands their monetization avenues should definitely push SoFi a little bit higher. Hopefully that makes sense. Going into this upcoming week, let's look at the technicals. Roughly 7.8% of the free float is being shorted, working out to about 95 million shares. I've brought this up time and time again. Shorts only increased by a marginal amount on Friday, despite some broader market weakness. Given that the cost to borrow is still relatively low, around 0.5% annually, the fact that shorts aren't aggressively doubling down is, in my view, relatively bullish. This indicates that a significant portion of Friday's late day push lower was likely due to algorithmic trading and end of week rebalancing rather than conviction-based institutional selling. When volume comes from hollow algo trades, it's easily reversible. Looking at the options chain for this upcoming week, the bull consensus appears to be targeting the $28 to $29 range. Bears, on the other hand, are anticipating it to be sub-25s, perhaps around the 24 to 24.50 area. Definitely, a little more upside is anticipated by the options market, and I think that's largely justified. SoFi has largely outperformed the broader market over the last 2 to 4 weeks, shrugging off some general weakness. A couple of key points to watch for: SoFi closed Friday at 26.85. It's currently sitting just below a crucial pivot point at 26.98. We need to see it get over and stay above that on Monday. Next strong targets and resistance levels are 27.90 and then 28.65. On the flip side, key support levels are at 25.15 and then 24.30. If you're looking to dollar cost average or swing trade, orient your buys around those support levels. One thing to note, we're roughly 2 weeks away from SoFi's upcoming Q3 2025 earnings. One thing that always happens pre-earnings is we get bearish ratings. Even though we did get a couple of recent bearish ratings over the last 2 weeks, we could get more. So don't be surprised if some analysts from Citizens, Barclays or others try to come out with downgrades in an attempt to really hurt SoFi and push it down before earnings. It's a classic play. On Friday, it did close slightly below its 10-day moving average, showing a slight cooling of immediate momentum. However, looking at the market position, you can still see a strong base of willing buyers extending down to around $25 sales, which is right below that 50-day moving average. So if there's any fear selling on Monday and it dips, that $25 to $25.15 zone should act as strong support. If it breaks below that, however, things could get quite shaky because we don't see as much willing buyer support below that. And generally speaking, that 50-day moving average is a very big deal for SoFi. Luckily enough, earlier in October, it did bounce off that level and trended higher. But going into this upcoming week, watch that 50-day, because if it does break below, then realistically anticipate the $24 range. Let me know your viewpoint on that. But like I mentioned, based on the flow, Friday's push lower was likely artificially done. And this is why when I talk about where volume comes from, I never like to see algorithmic trading as the main culprit because it's hollow. Whether pushing stock prices higher or lower, I'd much rather see institutions trading. Even if they're selling, it's conviction. Aside from that, there hasn't been much major news or any specific SoFi catalysts expected this week. At the end of the day, I do feel we'll see volatility, but most likely we'll be closing by the end of the week right around or just below this pivot point of 26.98. I do think we could go down and touch that 50-day moving average, but most likely we'll bounce off that level. Nothing significant. I don't really see 52-week highs being hit this week, but consolidation weeks are normal. Honestly, given the circumstances of the broader market with many big names coming out saying certain sectors are overvalued, even Tom Lee recently saying he sees more pain, but potentially that earnings season could be the catalyst to push the broader market higher, I think consolidation is normal and expected. Plus, it's still very healthy for the technicals. Well, that's all for me today. I appreciate all of you for watching and good luck to you.